Hello, everybody, and welcome to the January 26th, 2021 iteration of the SIG Windows community meeting. As always, these meetings are recorded and uploaded to YouTube, so be sure to adhere to all of the CNCF Code of Conduct and standards. All right, for those of you who joined, we were just starting a little bit of a pre-triage meeting, which I think is getting set up now, which leads us right into the first agenda item. Jay, Ravi, or James, do any of you want to kind of introduce this?
Sure. Yeah, so last week we had lots of discussions going on with the test grid team, the SIG testing team. And the main point that we were discussing is how can we ensure that the pre-submits are available for Windows. But we received a pushback from them saying that most of the jobs should not be pre-submits, but they should be post-submits or periodic jobs, considering we want the merge to be faster. So we sort of agreed to that. And then we decided that one of the main things that we need to ensure if we want to have post-merge or periodic jobs instead of having pre-submits is uh, we need to have solid green for all the jobs that are being tracked by the release team. There are two boards that are actually in the test grid that are actually tracked by the SIG release team. For folks who do not know, there is a separate release team in Kubernetes which handles all the release related issues. And they would actually track up two dashboards. One of them is SIG informing, the other is one of them is master informing and the other is master blocking. Uh, they have certain requirements for the jobs to be in either master informing or master blocking. And we believe that the container D job that we already have has met those requirements to be part of informing. And the upstream testing team is fine with it. They have told that yes, we can create a job which or we can update the test grid to include that particular job. James has created the PR, and as you can see in SIG release informing, we have the Azure AKS release Windows, which is like master tracking. Uh, and the next thing that we wanted to do is to make sure that this job actually becomes a release blocking. This ensures that the release team is actually upon those test grid failures, and if there is something wrong with any of the tests that are failing continuously, they would come back to us and then tell that this has to be triaged immediately. So that is the status from the upstream the SIG testing team. And as far as how can we meet those requirements is something that I'll discuss in a bit. But at a high level, what we want to have is, in order to make sure that we are meeting the high bar that has been set by the testing team, uh, for our job to be in the SIG release master blocking, what we intend to do is have a 15-minute or a 20-minute time every week so that we go through the test board and then ensure that there are no jobs that are continuously failing or the tests that are continuously failing in that particular job. So we want to use the initial 15 minutes of this community meeting, either like extend the community meeting by 15 minutes at the start or at the end to go through the test board, the test grid, and then identify those failing tests and then assign them to individuals who are part of this community. So this is at a high level the goal. And Jay and James, please, you can keep me honest and then add if you want to.
Yeah, that sounded about right. So just we have 3 jobs in the release master informing. 2 of them are on GCE. So it's actually the master informing over to the left.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
we have those in
SIG
120 informing.
Yeah, the SIG release informings are usually used to make like when the when the new patch versions come out.
Yeah.
So we have those there too.
Yep,
Oh, yep,
so-
there's a lot more.
So there's 3 in here. There's the GCE 2019, 1909, and then there's an AKS engine container D one. I think we just need some maybe some help from like the GCE folks on those couple tests there. We're working on the master container D one, so I guess just call out those are the 3 that we really need to track to be able to get some of these pushed to the master blocking, and they need to be solid green. There's a few other requirements around those as well.
Okay. Yep, I think that sounds good. In terms of figuring out the best time to do that, I think we should probably have that discussion in Slack so folks can participate. I personally usually join the SIG node meeting immediately following this, so I'm open to joining earlier, but I wouldn't be able to join after. But if that time works better for the majority of folks, feel free to carry on with that.
I mean, I'm happy to just keep the early time, and if folks want to do an after time too, we can, a group of people can also do the after time. I think having you there is pretty important, Mark. So we're not gonna, that's not gonna change unless you go away. Seems like.
All right, and yeah, it looks like this issue was linked in there too. Is this mainly, yeah, okay, so this is where we're just tracking the failures to get green, it looks like.
Yeah, I think the other thing that Jay wanted to bring there is related to what is the policy that we are going to adhere to when it comes to failing jobs that are like continuously failing, and we actually need some help from other set of people. Like for example, there are some storage tests that are failing on the Windows side, or there are some GCE specific things that are failing. So if you want our test grid to be green, like should we come up with a policy that, hey, if you're not going to meet this bar, we may have to kick you out of the test grid. And it can be the test can be anything, irrespective of whoever authored the test.
I think we should be careful with that. I think if we determine that it is a flaky job, that might be okay, but it would really feel bad kind of taking, if there are issues that we know need to be fixed but aren't in our power to fix, kind of hiding those, escalating to like other SIG leaderships. This might be a good first action there.
I agree. Yeah. But in either case, I think the policy needs to be like less strict or strict, but in all the cases, we need to have some policy saying that this is the SLA that we are going to honor in case we want to go green is the point that Jay was trying to make. And Jay, correct me if I'm wrong.
My thinking was, so Mark, I told this story, when I was in grad school, there was this guy from the military that came in and he saw all of our CI jobs, and we were building Gradware. And the first thing he did was tell us, like, the jobs, we need to either know if we're passing or failing based on some standard that we actually agree on. And I feel like we're kind of suffering from that here, where when I look at it, I see so much red that I don't even know how to interpret whether any work needs to be done. And so I guess that's the trade-off there, right? Is that
Yep, that's totally fair.
Not knowing what the situation is sucks, but killing other people's jobs also sucks. But I think not knowing what the situation is such a bad thing that it makes it okay to hide other signal. I know it's weird, but that's my devil's advocate to what you said.
Yeah, I think like instead of saying that we're going to hide that, perhaps what we can say is we're going to incentivize the other teams to be much more what do you call regular in finding out the problems and then helping us out. That's the way I see it.
I mean, another option could be to remove those jobs from the test jobs that are running for the release informing our master, but continue running them as another test pass, kind of put them in a timeout or something.
Yeah, that's what I was suggesting.
Mm-hmm.
Like all of us were suggesting the same thing. Like I think James is currently looking into it, but the way we can do is we can specify certain jobs within the release informing using a regex, saying that these type of these are the current set of jobs that can be ignored for this run. So I think James is actually looking into it. Correct me if I'm wrong, James. I believe you have started looking into it.
Yeah, well, I didn't want to do anything because in particular, it's the couple of the jobs for the release informing is for the Google folks. And so I didn't want to start messing with their jobs in the release informing until we got some kind of agreement with everybody. I think I pinged in Slack as well on it. So.
Yeah, I wanted to just chime in and say I agree with pretty much everything that Ravi and James and Jay have shared. And one thing that would be helpful for me and for our team is to just have it written down somewhere, like where and which test jobs are the critical ones that we need to keep green. Because there are a lot of test jobs, and it's become a little bit challenging for people who aren't looking at those jobs every single day or with some regularity to keep track of what's what and what's important or most important to keep green. If we had that written down somewhere, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, that's great. Let's add that. Let's get a little kind of sticky section on top of this meeting note about the critical test passes that we're looking at.
Yeah, and one thing I tried to do a while back was try to reorganize the dashboard a little bit, and I think was pretty successful, but we could do that even further and say, these are the critical, and just kind of restrict to these are the critical tests and have one view of like the 3 or 4 tests that we really care about. And that way we know that that's the dashboard that we want to keep track of.
Mm-hmm. All right, I think this is good, but in the interest of time, I think I'd like to move the discussions on a little bit, if that's all right with everyone. All right, yep, let's go. Let's move so I think some action items are, let's move discussion into Slack about what time people prefer and figure out how to get that kind of set up and on the calendar for everybody and kind of keep that going. I think that's a great effort. I think the next things that I wanted to discuss today, or I think are important to discuss today, are some of the 121 KEP enhancements that we're planning on making. Kind of wanted to give it a pulse check on the 2 that we're tracking so far. And the first one was using the kubectl to view system service logs. I think our event said he was not going to be here, but Christian, would you be able to talk to this a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. So I think we're pretty well set. We do have to do some more investigation into what capabilities kubectl already has at this point, because we're essentially proposing to expand an API that already exists. We haven't seen a client for that yet. Essentially, there is already kubelet functionality to serve files from the var log directory, log files, and we want to add a shim to that so we can also stream journal CTL logs for Linux nodes, as well as Windows event logs. So yeah, essentially we have the kubelet part done. There's a PR open for that, and on the kubectl side, we have to do some more investigation and see, yeah, how we can expose that, and especially we want that to be a functionality that can only be accessed by admins. So we're not sure if there's other commands that already have this limitation. So yeah, some more investigation is needed, but other than that, we'd invite more reviews, obviously.
Yeah, it looks like Deep reviewed everything. I looked at this a little bit. I think that this is a great idea, as we've discussed. Just in terms of feedback for this KEP, I think it would be good to put some of the design details that were even if it's just taking the route that you had in the implementation here and stick that in the KEP. I have a feeling that when folks from other SIGs are going to review this KEP, they may just look at what's in the actual enhancement proposal, see that it's not populated, and not take a look at the actual implementation behind it. So I just want to make sure that this gets a fair chance for review. And I do know that we're discussing with, trying to discuss with SIG CLI about the kubectl enhancements. Have you been able to get traction with anybody from there to help, like with any prototypes or answered some design questions?
No, not yet. We haven't had, or we haven't received any feedback from the SIG CLI yet.
Okay. If you haven't gotten any feedback yet, it might make sense to take this to one of their SIG community meetings. I'll have to look on the community calendar when SIG CLI meets, and I can help kind of drive that and facilitate that with you all too.
Oh yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah, the other I did mention too, I think SIG Auth would probably like to have a look at this too, since I think that they're at least my view is that if we're exposing, at least on the Windows side, more system events than what is exposed just by the kubelet, that could potentially have some security implications. I know the SIG Auth I think meets Wednesdays, so if you want,
So,
I guess we
yeah.
could talk on Slack. We could maybe just float this by them in their meeting too.
So yeah, definitely. So in for the Linux case here, this doesn't actually expose anything that isn't already exposed, at least from the kubelet side. Again, I don't know if there's a client implementation for that specific feature already, but it essentially just adds a shim for the general CTL command, which stores all its logs in that var log directory already. It's just not that easily searchable, and we kind of add a shim for the for general CTL on Linux, and then on Windows accessing the Win event log there. That's probably something that isn't already exposed in the on Windows. It's the C var log directory. It's probably not in there. So yeah, that for Windows that might actually be true, and security people might want to look into that.
Okay, sounds good. Yep, anybody on the call or anybody in SIG Windows, please feel free to take a look and comment on this KEP. Are there any other questions or discussions around this, or should we move on to the next proposal? All right, I take that as moving on. Thank you, Christian, for coming and talking to this some.
All right, thank you all.
The next KEP that we're tracking is the Windows Privileged Container Support for Alpha. I've been working on this along with some other folks. I have not seen too many reviews for the KEP outside of SIG API and Jordan Leggett, so I'd appreciate some looks at that. Some updates we have here are, we now have a proof of concept of this working. Hopefully we'll try and have a demo of this for next week. In order for this proof of concept to run, there are a couple of binaries that need to be built with changes. So I've called those out here. One is HCS shim, and there's a pull request with the changes that are needed for HCS shim. Container D binary you can actually just pick up from the container or recent container D release. And the kubelet has some changes in order to pass some annotations along. And then your pod specs need to have this particular annotation added. So we'll try and demo that next week and get a little bit more feedback. I did a little bit of kind of preliminary testing, and things were mostly working as expected. So I think that that's good. I'm kind of in the same boat. We're waiting for feedback from a couple other SIGs in order to help move this into an implementable state. I think that we ended up not having that discussion on host network support. I ended up canceling because we still needed to kind of align some things inside of Microsoft. Are there folks here that are interested in kicking that off again? Or in the KEP, we've kind of called out that host network mode is the only supported network mode for these Windows privileged containers in the future. And we will be enforcing that through API validation for the pod specs for now. So if anybody has any concerns about that specifically, or wants to kind of deep dive into what that actually means, we can set up another kind of deep dive meeting for this. Any thoughts on that? I think Jocelyn and Jay were particularly interested here.
I'm totally in on any tax session, deep dive, whatever about any of this stuff. I think it's totally awesome and we totally need it. So this is really cool. Just whatever. Like there's nothing that's higher priority for us than this. So if you schedule it for 4 a.m. on Saturday morning, I'll totally be there. So don't worry about what time it is. Just whenever you want to show us, just let us know. We'll, yeah.
Okay.
I think it will also be beneficial for OpenShift too. So I'd like to join from Red Hat side.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
and I agree with Jay on this. I'm really interested as well.
okay. Yeah. In my kind of experimenting, I was able to run CSI proxy in a privileged container and run through some scenarios, and it looked like everything was working. I think the next thing to try is probably getting kubeproxy running in a privileged container. If there's any other things to try after that, please let me know. All right, and moving on, I see Ray joined, and I'm not sure if you wanted to discuss what we were talking about on Slack about the security audits or not. Ray?
Yeah, should have my video on.
Yep,
All
hey,
right,
Ray.
my name is Ray Lahano. I'm from SUSE by way of Rancher Labs. I also work a lot with SIG security and SIG release with I'm one of the leads for 1.21 for docs. So what we chatted about in Slack was that there will be an RFP out for security audits for this year and a third-party security audit for Kubernetes. Windows is not in scope, but as for my work, as we've seen a growing number of Windows customers and Windows end users, for future audits, we do want to have Windows in scope of future third-party security audits. And ideally, I think the cadence will be annually, but yeah, I might be incorrect with that for a third-party security audit. So, so it won't be in this year's audit, but I do want to have a next year's audit. And one of my goals, or they might ask, one of the questions was how many end users or Windows end users are there? So I know from my perspective, we don't keep track of how many Windows end users there are, but I don't know if there are any other people here that with their companies that do keep track of that. But it's not required yet, but I do kind of want to have that, you know, to support the case or to support adding Windows be in the security audit for next year.
All right, I think that would be awesome to get Windows included. As I mentioned to you in Slack, I will need to reach out to some folks to see if there's anything we can disclose about user numbers from AKS, if that would help. I don't know, is anybody on the call interested in helping to get this kind of security audit going? And if they are, and have numbers to share, please reach out to either Ray, myself, or any of the tech leads here. We'll try and get this happening.
And I'll probably reach out again around the fall time, so I could start gaining that, start building the case for adding Windows and put that on people's radar well ahead of when the next RFP is out.
Okay, sounds good. Does anybody have any other questions for Ray here?
All right, and in case I'm going to put the RFP, the link to the RFP on the chats, find it right now, in case if anyone's curious to what the current RFP is.
Awesome. I will update the notes. My laptop is being a bit sluggish recording Zoom and having the Google Docs open, so I'll patch that up afterwards. I think that's everything that we had on the agenda for today. Does anybody else have any topics they'd like to discuss or go deeper into something we've already discussed?
I want to talk about one particular GitHub issue that DIMS has created. This is for replacing Docker shim with container DTES. So I think all of us are on agreement. I just want to make sure that all of us are in agreement regarding the type of test. To be clear, the Docker shim tests earlier were using in-tree cloud provider as the plugin, whereas we wanted to use the CSA, or we are currently using CSA plugin for container DTES. So the initial plan of thought that I had earlier was I would create a test which is almost similar to what we have in Docker shim. But the way I see it currently is we want to use CSI. I just want to make sure that everyone is in agreement. If you're fine, I will go ahead and update the PR that I opened to ensure not to use the entry plugins, but to use the CSI proxy.
From my perspective, I think that we have at least periodic tests that use the that use CSI proxy, or that use the entry plugins, or that use Docker shim and CSI proxy. But I do think that you're correct that the ones that get triggered automatically are using Docker shim and and the entry plugins. I'm not entirely sure on the timelines. Maybe Deep or Jing can comment here. They're much more involved with storage than I am, but I'm kind of my view is that we should pursue the CSI proxy. I thought that the entry storage plugins were slated to be removed a couple of releases ago already in favor of out of tree plugins and CSI proxies, the way for enabling those on Windows. So I think I'm okay with only enabling the new tests for Containerd and CSI proxy.
Okay.
Yep, agree.
All right. So if all of us are in agreement, I'll modify that test. That's it. Thank you.
All right.
1 minute. I'd just say thanks to Claudio for all the work he's done with all the image promotion stuff. We've actually had some test runs pulling from the GCE container registry. So we got those images now being pulled, and we don't have to, or for at least a subset of the images, we don't have to mirror those to a Windows only repository. So just, it was a pretty big accomplishment from for all the testing work that's been happening over the last 2 years. So thanks.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have a quick question. I forgot to bring this up. I have the network policy tests running, but I have not been able to get them to pass on any Windows environment. Like I've run them on, I've run them on Calico on EKS with an up-to-date Calico. I've run them on various like Antria versions. I've run them. Well, I know in Azure, in AKS, we don't yet support network policies for Windows. I was just curious if there's some kind of bleeding edge Azure AKS version I could use to test them, but I'm looking for like a gold standard to compare Antria to. Does anybody use network policies on Windows at large scales, especially on Containerd? Because that seems to be something that I really wanted to get tests working with.
I was following that issue for a little bit that you also opened up last week. But I saw that you closed it, and that was actually a duplicate for another issue.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah,
I didn't even follow up on that because I thought that issue was resolved after all.
No, I have. Sorry, I think I gave you the wrong link. Do you want to chat about this after the meeting for a little bit, Claudio?
Yeah, currently it's gonna be the SIG testing meeting, so I'm gonna have to attend that as well. But after that, sure, after 1 hour.
Okay, I'll put a link in the upstream Slack.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. Anyways, I have to drop.
I think we're at the end, so we'll see y'all later.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.